I found my fiance's hidden hard drive full of images of children. Some were my students and others were of his niece. When I reported him to the authorities, he said, "You have no idea what you've done. They'll come for you too." I stayed silent. That was 2 months ago. Yesterday, he saw the trial verdict and went completely still. Detective Reyes sat beside me and gently reassured me. "You're doing the right thing, Allie. We're going to find everything he's been hiding." Marcus was seated at the kitchen table, an officer standing behind him. He kept his eyes on me, but I couldn't look at him. I stared at my hands instead, twisting my engagement ring around my finger. "Found something," an officer called from the bedroom. "Hidden compartment in the closet." Detective Reyes squeezed my shoulder before going to see what they discovered. I heard murmured voices. Then she returned, looking grim. "More storage devices," she told me quietly, "and printed photographs." I closed my eyes, feeling sick again. How much more was there that I hadn't found? The search continued for over 2 hours. They found hard drives hidden throughout the apartment, taped under drawers, inside hollowed-out books, behind the bathroom ventilation fan, places I never would have thought to look. They found a second laptop hidden in a locked case under the bed. They found SD cards inside a fake wall outlet. All the while, Marcus sat silently at the kitchen table, guarded by 2 officers. Occasionally, we'd make eye contact, and I could see the hatred in his eyes that made me feel small. Finally, Detective Reyes approached him. "Marcus Smith, you're under arrest for possession of child indecency." She read him his rights as another officer handcuffed him. As they led him toward the door, Marcus suddenly turned toward me. "You stupid beach," he spat. "You have no idea what you've done." An officer yanked him forward. "That's enough." But Marcus wasn't finished. "They'll come for you too," he yelled. "You think I'm the only one? They know where you live, where you work. They know about your students." I felt chills. The officer shoved Marcus through the door, but his words had done the damage he'd intended. Detective Reyes sat beside me again. "He's just trying to scare you. Pursuers often work in networks, but we'll find anyone he's connected to." I nodded, but Marcus's threat stuck with me. What if he wasn't bluffing? What if there were others watching me now, angry that I'd exposed one of their own? After Marcus was taken away, officers continued cataloging evidence. Detective Reyes explained they'd need to take my laptop too, just to check if Marcus had accessed it. She assured me I'd get it back soon. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we process all this evidence. It will take time since there's a lot to go through. But based on what we found already, he'll be facing serious federal charges." "And me? What do I do?" She smiled softly. "You start picking up the pieces. It won't be easy. I can refer you to a counselor who specializes in helping partners of offenders." Partners of offenders. The phrase made my skin crawl. Is that what I was now? By the time they finished, it was nearly midnight. Detective Reyes suggested I not stay in the apartment tonight. "Do you have somewhere you can go? Family? Friends?" I thought about my options. My parents lived 3 hours away. My best friend Megan had a spare room, but she had 2 young daughters. After what Marcus had said, I couldn't risk bringing this problem to another home. "I can get a hotel," I said finally. Detective Reyes nodded. "That's probably best for tonight. Pack whatever you need. An officer can escort you." I gathered all my stuff, feeling numb out of my mind. Everything looked different now, tainted by what had happened. The framed photos of Marcus and me on the walls seemed to mock me. The wedding planning binder on the coffee table was a cruel joke. A young female officer helped me carry my bags to my car. "I'm sorry you're going through this," she said quietly. "It's not your fault, you know." I nodded, but I didn't believe her. How could I not have seen it? How could I have lived with him, loved him, planned to marry him, and never noticed the monster beneath the surface? I checked into a cheap hotel near the highway, using cash instead of my credit card. I didn't know if Marcus's friends could track my payments, but I wasn't taking any chances. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at nothing. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Reyes. "Officer posted outside your hotel tonight in case anyone shows up. Get some rest." I appreciated the precaution, but doubted I'd sleep at all. I turned on the TV for background noise and laid down fully clothed on top of the covers. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus's angry face pop up, and I heard his threats echoing in my head. The next morning, I checked my phone to find several missed calls from my mom, Megan, and the school principal. News traveled fast. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone yet, so I texted my mom that I was safe but needed time, and emailed the principal asking for a few personal days. I spent most of the day in that hotel room, alternating between crying and periods of numb shock. Around noon, Detective Reyes called with an update. "We've only begun processing the evidence, but I wanted you to know that Marcus is being held without bail. The judge considered him a flight risk and a danger to the community." "Has he said anything?" I asked. "He's lawyered up, not talking." "But Allie, the evidence speaks for itself. There's a lot more than what you found. Much worse." I closed my eyes, grateful I hadn't seen whatever worse entailed. What about what he said? About others knowing where I live and work? "We're taking it seriously, but it's likely just a threat to scare you. These types often try to intimidate witnesses. Still, we'll have patrol cars monitoring your apartment and the school for the next few weeks." After we hung up, I forced myself to shower and change clothes. I needed to figure out my next steps. I couldn't stay in this hotel forever, but I couldn't go back to that apartment either. Everything there reminded me of Marcus. I decided to call my mom back. She answered on the first ring, her voice frantic. "Allie, what's going on?" "The police called asking questions about Marcus, and then Mrs. Kovach next door said there were police cars at your apartment last night." I took a deep breath and told her everything. Well, I spared her the worst details, but enough that she understood the situation. She gasped and cried in all the right places, then immediately insisted I come stay with them. "Just until you figure things out, honey. You shouldn't be alone right now." She was right. I needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere somewhere Marcus and his friends wouldn't think to look for me. I agreed to drive to my parents' house the next day. That night, I ordered room service and forced myself to eat half a sandwich while scrolling through my phone. I had dozens of notifications, texts from friends asking if I was okay, emails about wedding vendors needing decisions, a reminder about a dress fitting scheduled for next week. My old life, suddenly irrelevant. I opened Instagram without thinking and was immediately confronted with photos from Jared Marcus's photographer friend who was supposed to shoot our wedding. He'd posted new pictures of a children's birthday party he'd photographed. I felt sick looking at them, wondering if he shared Marcus's perversions. Detective Reyes had taken down the names of all Marcus's close associates. I hoped they were investigating Jared too. I deleted Instagram from my phone, then Facebook and Twitter for good measure. I didn't want any connection to my old life right now. I didn't want to see the concerned messages or, worse, the accusations that might come once news of Marcus's arrest spread. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and drove to my parents' house in Riverdale, 3 hours away. The familiar drive gave me too much time to think. I kept replaying moments with Marcus, searching for signs I might have missed. The way he always volunteered to photograph school events, how he'd suggest we babysit for friends with young daughters but never sons, how he'd scroll through Instagram accounts of child models and comment on their talent. It had all been there, hiding in plain sight. I'd been blind because I wanted to believe in the man I thought I loved. My parents were waiting on the porch when I pulled into their driveway. Mom rushed to hug me before I even got out of the car. Dad stood back, his face a mixture of concern and barely contained anger. He'd always been protective of me, and I knew he was struggling not to drive to the city and confront Marcus himself. "We've got the guest room all ready for you," Mom said, taking my bag. "And I made your favorite lasagna." Their house was exactly as it had always been, comfortable, slightly cluttered, smelling of Mom's cooking and Dad's woodworking projects. My childhood home, untouched by the ugliness of what had happened. I felt some of the tension leave my body as I stepped inside. That evening after dinner, we sat in the living room and talked. Really talked. I told them more details about what I'd found and how I'd contacted Detective Reyes. Dad paced the room, hands clenched into fists. Mom cried quietly, reaching over to squeeze my hand every few minutes. "I just can't believe it," she kept saying. "He seems so perfect for you. That's what makes men like him so dangerous," Dad said grimly. "They're good at pretending to be something they're not." I stayed with my parents for a week, sleeping in my childhood bedroom surrounded by high school trophies and faded posters. I barely left the house except to sit on the back porch and breathe in the fresh country air. I ignored most calls and texts, only responding to Detective Reyes and occasionally my principal. Detective Reyes called every other day with updates. They were building a case against Marcus, and it was strong. They'd found evidence that he'd been producing and distributing images for years, long before he met me. They'd identified several other men in his network, including Jared, who had also been arrested. "What about the girls in the photos?" I asked during one call. "Are they safe?" "We're working with Child Protective Services. In cases like this, we have to interview each child carefully to determine if there was contact abuse or just exploitation through photos." The thought made me sick. Had Marcus physically harmed any of those children? Had he abused his own niece? I couldn't bear to ask. On my 8th day at my parents' house, Detective Reyes called with news that Marcus wanted to make a deal. He's offering to give up names and server locations in exchange for a reduced sentence. Are you going to take it? That's up to the prosecutor, but his information could help us shut down a major distribution network. It might be worth it. I wasn't sure how I felt about that. Part of me wanted Marcus to rot in prison for the maximum time possible, but if his cooperation could save other children from exploitation, wasn't that more important? That same day, I received an email from a lawyer representing Marcus's sister, Victoria. She was requesting to speak with me about Sophia. My stomach dropped. I called Detective Reyes immediately. Should I talk to her? What if she blames me for what happened? Actually, she's been cooperating with our investigation. She found additional evidence in their parents' house where Marcus stored some equipment. I think she just wants information. I agreed to a phone call with Victoria the next day. I barely slept that night, rehearsing what I would say to the mother of one of Marcus's victims. "How do you tell someone their brother exploited their child?" Victoria called exactly at the agreed time. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying for days. "Allie, thank you for agreeing to talk to me." "Of course," I said, my own voice shaking. "How are you and Sophia doing?" She broke down then, sobbing into the phone. "They showed me some of the photos. My baby, my little girl, and I never noticed anything wrong." I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry, Victoria. I didn't know either. If I had any idea." No, she interrupted. "I'm not blaming you. I'm calling to thank you. If you hadn't found those photos and gone to the police, who knows how long it would have continued. You saved my daughter from more abuse." We talked for nearly an hour. Victoria told me that Sophia was in therapy and seemed to be doing okay so far. Marcus had never touched her inappropriately. As far as they could tell, his abuse had been limited to taking secret photos. Small mercies. Before we hung up, Victoria said something that stuck with me. "We can't blame ourselves for not seeing the monster behind his mask. People like Marcus spend their whole lives perfecting that disguise." After talking with Victoria, I felt a shift inside me. The paralyzing shock began to give way to anger at Marcus, at myself, at the world that allowed predators to hide in plain sight. I decided it was time to start rebuilding my life. I called my principal and arranged to return to work the following week. I contacted a real estate agent about listing the apartment. Detective Reyes had confirmed I could legally do this since only my name was on the lease. I called the wedding vendors and canceled everything, losing thousands in deposits but feeling lighter with each call. The day before I was set to return to school, Detective Reyes called with big news. The prosecutor has accepted Marcus's deal. He's provided information that's already led to 3 more arrests. He'll still serve at least 10 years, possibly more depending on good behavior. Only 10 years? I felt a flash of anger. After what he did? I know it doesn't seem like enough, but without a deal, we might never have found the others in his network, and he'll be registered as an intimacy offender for life once he's released. He'll never work with children again. I tried to take comfort in that. 10 years was better than nothing, and in the meantime, I had my own life to rebuild. Returning to school was harder than I expected. Everyone had heard about Marcus's arrest, and it had made the local news, though thankfully they hadn't mentioned my name. Still, people knew. I could feel their stares, hear their whispers. Some colleagues avoided me like I was contaminated by association. Others were overly nice, their pity almost worse than the avoidance. My students, thankfully, knew nothing about it. To them, I was just Ms. Allie who had been out sick for a while. Their innocent faces and simple problems were a welcome distraction from the chaos of my personal life. During my lunch break, I hid in my classroom rather than face the teacher's lounge. Jenna brought me a sandwich and sat with me, not asking questions but offering silent support. I was grateful for friends like her who didn't treat me like I was broken. After school, I drove to my new apartment, a small one-bedroom in a secure building across town. My parents had helped me find it and paid the security deposit as a gift. It was nothing special, but it was mine alone, and Marcus had never set foot in it. I was starting fresh. That evening, as I unpacked the few belongings I'd taken from my old life, my phone rang. It was Detective Reyes again. I wanted to let you know that we've identified most of the children in the images Marcus possessed. We're working with their families now. Were any of them my students? I held my breath, dreading the answer. 3 were from your school, yes. 2 from your class last year. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor. Children I had taught, cared for, helped with math problems and art projects. Children whose parents trusted me to keep them safe. And all the while, Marcus had been exploiting them. The parents don't blame you, Allie, Detective Reyes said gently. No one could have known. But I blamed myself. I should have seen something, noticed something. I was their teacher. There's something else, Detective Reyes continued. We found evidence that Marcus was planning to target more children at your school. He had a list, names, schedules, notes about which kids seemed vulnerable. I felt like I might throw up again. When was he planning this? After your wedding, he had it all mapped out which events he'd volunteer to photograph, which kids he'd focus on. Your position at the school gave him access he wouldn't have had otherwise. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Marcus hadn't just been using me as a cover for his activities. He'd been planning to use our marriage, my job, my relationships with students and their parents to find new victims. Our entire relationship had been strategic on his part. I need to go, I whispered, ending the call before Detective Reyes could say anything else. I spent that night curled in a ball on my new bed, crying until I had no tears left. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my relationship, my future, had been a carefully constructed lie. Marcus hadn't loved me. He'd loved what I could provide him with access to children. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. Yes, I had been used. Yes, I had been deceived by a monster wearing a human mask. But I had also been the one to expose him. I had trusted my instincts when I found those photos. I had gone to the police despite my fear and confusion. I had helped stop him from hurting more children. I got dressed for school with a new resolve. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could make sure I was more vigilant in the future. I could protect my students better now that I knew what signs to look for. As I was leaving my apartment, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You should have kept your mouth shut. We're watching you. My blood ran cold. I immediately called Detective Reyes and forwarded her the message. It's probably just an attempt to scare you, she said, but I could hear the concern in her voice. We'll trace the number. In the meantime, be extra aware of your surroundings. Don't go anywhere alone if you can help it. I drove to school looking in my rearview mirror every few seconds, jumping at every car that seemed to be following the same route. Was Marcus's threat real? Were there really others watching me, angry that I'd exposed their friend? I parked in the school lot and sat in my car for several minutes, scanning the area for anything suspicious. Just as I was about to get out, a car pulled up beside me. I tensed, ready to drive away, when I recognized Jenna's face through the window. She smiled and waved, completely unaware of my panic. We walked into school together, Jenna chatting about a new reading program she wanted to try with our struggling students. Normal, everyday teacher talk. I tried to focus on her words instead of scanning every shadow, every corner, for potential threats. The school day passed in a blur of lessons and activities. I found myself watching the classroom door more than usual, jumping whenever someone walked past in the hallway. During recess, I kept all my students in my direct line of sight, counting heads obsessively. After school, Jenna invited me to grab coffee. You seem on edge today, she said as we sat at a small table in the corner of the cafe. Is everything okay? I considered lying, saying I was fine, but I was tired of secrets. I got a threatening text this morning. Probably nothing, but after everything with Marcus, Jenna's eyes widened. That's terrifying. Have you told the police? I nodded. They're looking into it. They think it might just be someone trying to scare me. Well, it's working, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Listen, why don't you stay at my place tonight? I've got that pull-out couch, and I'd feel better knowing you weren't alone. I hesitated, thinking of Marcus's warning about his friends knowing where I worked. What if they knew who my friends were too? I don't want to put you at risk. Don't be ridiculous. Safety in numbers, right? Plus, my apartment building has security cameras and a doorman. I finally agreed, grateful not to spend another night jumping at every sound in my new apartment. We stopped by my place so I could pack an overnight bag, Jenna waiting in the car while I ran inside. As I was grabbing clothes from my dresser, my phone rang. Detective Reyes again. We traced that text, she said without preamble. It came from a burner phone purchased with cash. We can't identify who bought it, but the purchase was made at a convenience store near the jail where Marcus is being held. So it could be one of his visitors? My voice shook. Possibly. Or someone acting on his instructions. We're reviewing visitor logs and phone records. In the meantime, I've arranged for additional patrols near your apartment and the school. I told her I was staying with Jenna tonight and she approved of the plan. Good thinking. Don't be alone if you can help it. And Allie, don't let this control your life. That's what they want to keep you afraid of. I knew she was right, but it was easier said than done. Fear had become my constant companion since finding those photos on Marcus's hard drive. I spent the night on Jenna's pull-out couch, waking at every creak and groan of the old building. Jenna made pancakes in the morning, trying to keep things light and normal, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "You know," she said as we drove to school, "my cousin's a private investigator. He could maybe keep an eye on things for you, give you some peace of mind." I considered it. The police were doing what they could, but they had limited resources. That might not be a bad idea. Can you ask him what he'd charge? Jenna nodded. I'll call him today. At school, I was on high alert again. I checked in with the front office to make sure they weren't allowing any unauthorized visitors. I kept my classroom door locked during lessons. I walked my students to and from the playground in tight formation, counting heads constantly. During my prep period, I received an email from Detective Reyes with an update. They'd identified 3 men from Marcus's network who had been released on bail pending trial. All were wearing ankle monitors, but it was possible one of them had sent the threatening text or asked someone else to do it. She attached their photos and names, asking me to report immediately if I saw any of them. I studied the photos carefully. 3 ordinary-looking men, 1 balding with glasses, 1 young with a beard, 1 middle-aged and clean-cut. Men you'd pass on the street without a second glance. Men who might be teachers, coaches, or youth pastors. Men like Marcus. The thought made me shudder. How many more were out there, hiding behind normal facades, gaining access to children through jobs and relationships? How could anyone ever trust again knowing what monsters might be lurking behind friendly smiles? I forwarded the photos to Jenna with a brief explanation, asking her to keep an eye out for these men around the school. 2 sets of eyes were better than 1. That afternoon, I received another text from the same unknown number. "We know where you're staying. You can't hide forever." My hands shook so badly I could barely forward it to Detective Reyes. How did they know I wasn't at my apartment? Were they watching Jenna's place too? Had they followed us? Detective Reyes called immediately after receiving my message. "This is escalating. I'm sending an officer to the school to escort you home, and we'll have someone watch your apartment tonight." "But how did they know I wasn't home last night?" I whispered, afraid of being overheard in the empty classroom. "I don't know, but we're taking this very seriously now. These aren't just intimidation tactics anymore." The officer arrived just as school was letting out. He was in plain clothes but introduced himself discreetly and walked me to my car. I felt the stares of other teachers and parents, curious about why I had a police escort. More rumors to add to the fire. I decided to return to my own apartment despite the threats. I couldn't impose on Jenna indefinitely, and hiding at different locations wouldn't solve the problem. The officer checked my apartment thoroughly before leaving, assuring me another patrol car would be outside all night. I double-checked all the locks, then pulled the blinds closed. I heated up a frozen dinner and ate it standing at the kitchen counter, too anxious to sit down. Every sound from the hallway made me jump. Neighbors coming home from work, someone taking out trash, a dog barking. Around 8 p.m., my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Allie, it's Victoria, Marcus's sister." I relaxed slightly. "Hi, Victoria. Is everything okay?" "No, not really." Her voice was tight with stress. "I got a call today from someone asking about you. They said they were a friend of Marcus's and wanted to know if I knew where you were staying." My blood ran cold. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing, of course." I hung up and called that detective right away. "But Allie, they had my private number. The only way they could have gotten it is from Marcus." I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly weak. "Did they threaten you or Sophia?" "No, they just asked about you. But it scared me enough that we're staying with my in-laws for a while." After we hung up, I called Detective Reyes again to tell her what Victoria had said. She sounded grim. "We'll check Marcus's visitor logs and phone records again. He shouldn't have access to outside contacts except through monitored channels, but inmates find ways." "What if they come after me?" I whispered. "What if they try to hurt me?" "We won't let that happen," she said firmly. "But Allie, you might want to consider getting out of town for a while, just until we can identify who's behind these threats." I thought about it. I could go back to my parents' house, but that seemed too obvious. I could ask for a leave of absence from school and travel somewhere, but I had limited savings after canceling the wedding and renting a new apartment. "I'll think about it," I told her. "But I can't just run away forever. This is my life." That night, I barely slept despite knowing a police car was parked outside. I kept imagining someone climbing up the fire escape, breaking through my window, silencing me before I could scream. Every creak of the building settling made my heart race. In the morning, I was exhausted but determined to carry on. I couldn't let fear control my life. I got ready for school, checking out my window to see the police car still faithfully parked across the street. As I was gathering my teaching materials, my phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. "Running late. Can you cover my morning duty?" I texted back a quick, "Sure," and headed to school earlier than usual. The parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived, just a few cars belonging to the custodial staff and early bird teachers. I walked briskly to the main entrance, keys in hand, scanning the area out of habit. Nothing seemed out of place. The school was quiet and peaceful in the early morning light. I unlocked the side door with my key card and stepped inside. The hallway was dimly lit, most of the classroom still dark. I made my way to the office to sign in, my footsteps echoing on the polished floor. As I rounded the corner, I nearly collided with a man coming from the opposite direction. I stumbled back, an apology on my lips, when recognition hit me like a bucket of ice water. It was one of the men from Detective Reyes's photos, the young one with the beard. He was dressed as a janitor, complete with a name badge that read, Mike, but I knew it wasn't real. We didn't have a janitor named Mike. He smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. "Hello, Allie," he said softly. "Marcus sends his regards." My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. The man Mike took a step toward me, and that finally kicked my brain into gear. I turned and ran, sprinting back down the hallway toward the side door I'd just come through. I could hear his footsteps pounding behind me. I slammed into the door, fumbling with the handle. It was one of those doors that automatically locks when it closes. Poop. I needed my keycard again. I frantically dug in my pocket while glancing over my shoulder. He was getting closer. My fingers closed around my keycard just as he reached for me. I ducked under his arm and bolted down another hallway. My mind was racing. I needed to get a phone. I needed to call for help. The main office was too far away now. I darted into the first classroom I saw, slamming the door behind me and locking it. It was Mrs. Blake's kindergarten room. I grabbed the classroom phone on her desk and dialed 911 with shaking hands. 911, what's your emergency? There's an intruder at Oakwood Elementary School. He's after me. He's connected to a child indecency case. Please hurry. I gave them my name and explained I was a teacher. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line and find a secure location to hide. Police were already on their way. A loud bang on the door made me jump and drop the phone. I know you're in there, Allie, Mike called in a sing-song voice. We just want to talk. We? Were there more of them? I grabbed the phone again. The dispatcher was still there. He's trying to get in, I whispered. Please hurry. I looked around the classroom for somewhere to hide or something to use as a weapon. Mrs. Blake had safety scissors and glue sticks, not exactly deadly weapons. The banging on the door continued, getting louder. He was throwing his body against it. The door was sturdy, but it wouldn't hold forever. I spotted the supply closet at the back of the room. I told the dispatcher I was going to hide and left the phone off the hook so they could hear what was happening. I ran to the closet, squeezing inside among the art supplies and extra paper. I pulled the door closed just as I heard the classroom door splinter open. Allie, Allie, Allie. Mike's voice echoed through the classroom. This isn't very nice. Marcus was good to you, and this is how you repay him? By destroying his life? I held my breath, trying not to make a sound. I could hear him moving around the classroom, opening cabinets, checking under desks. You know, we were all very disappointed when you went to the police, he continued conversationally. Marcus was our best photographer, such an eye for detail, and now he's giving up names to save his own skin. Very unfortunate. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. This couldn't be happening. Where were the police? We can't have that, you see. Can't have Marcus telling the police everything. So we figured, if something happened to you, well, he might reconsider his cooperation. My blood ran cold. They weren't just trying to scare me. They were going to unalive me to send Marcus a message. I heard his footsteps getting closer to the closet. I looked around desperately for a weapon, anything I could use to defend myself. My hand closed around a heavy 3-hole puncher on one of the shelves. The closet door flew open. Mike stood there, smiling that terrible smile. Found you. I swung the hole puncher as hard as I could, connecting with the side of his head. He stumbled backward, cursing. I pushed past him and ran for the classroom door, but he recovered quickly, grabbing my ankle. I fell hard, my chin hitting the floor. I tasted blood. He dragged me backward across the floor. I kicked and screamed, my nails scraping against the linoleum. He flipped me over, pinning me down with his weight. His hands closed around my throat. Nothing personal, he said, squeezing. Just business. Black spots danced in my vision as I struggled to breathe. I clawed at his hands, his face, anything I could reach. This couldn't be how it ended. Not like this. Suddenly the pressure was gone. There was a loud crash, and Mike's weight disappeared from my chest. I rolled to my side, gasping for air, my vision slowly clearing. Jenna stood over Mike's crumpled form, holding a fire extinguisher. Her face was pale but determined. I got your text about covering morning duty, but it seemed weird since I wasn't scheduled, she said, her voice shaking. I tried calling you back, but you didn't answer. So I came early to check and heard screaming. I couldn't speak yet, just reached for her hand. She helped me to my feet, just as we heard sirens outside. Police! Voices shouted from the hallway. Oakwood Elementary! Anyone inside? In here! Jenna called. We need help! Everything after that was a blur. Police officers swarmed the classroom. Mike was handcuffed while still unconscious. Paramedics checked my throat and the cut on my chin. Detective Reyes arrived, her face a mixture of relief and fury when she saw me. Are you okay? She asked, crouching beside the ambulance stretcher where I sat. I nodded, wincing at the pain in my throat. Jenna saved me. Detective Reyes squeezed my hand. We got another one too. There was a second man waiting in a car outside. When the patrol cars showed up, he tried to flee but crashed into a fire hydrant. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. 2 of them had come for me. If Jenna hadn't shown up when she did, we're taking you to the hospital to get checked out, Detective Reyes continued. And then we need to talk about getting you somewhere safe until the trial. At the hospital, they examined my throat and determined there was no permanent damage, just bruising and swelling. They kept me overnight for observation. Detective Reyes stayed with me, working from her laptop in a chair beside my bed. She told me they'd identified both men as part of Marcus's network. The second man, the one in the car, had been on their radar but not yet arrested due to insufficient evidence. They made a big mistake coming after you, she said grimly. Now we have them on attempted unaliving charges too. The next morning, my parents arrived at the hospital, having driven through the night after Detective Reyes called them. Mom burst into tears when she saw the bruises on my neck. Dad looked like he wanted to punch something. You're coming home with us, Mom said firmly. No arguments. I didn't have the energy to protest. Detective Reyes had already suggested I go somewhere remote until the trial, which was still months away. The school principal had called to say they'd arrange for a long-term substitute and hold my position until I could return safely. As we were preparing to leave the hospital, Detective Reyes pulled me aside. There's something else you should know. After yesterday's attack, Marcus reached out to the prosecutor. He's offering full cooperation now, names, locations, everything. No deals, no reduced sentence. Why would he do that? I asked, my voice still raspy from the choking. Apparently, he didn't authorize the hit on you. When he heard what happened, he was furious. He told the prosecutor he never wanted you harmed, just scared into silence. I didn't know how to feel about that. Was I supposed to be grateful that the man who collected photos of children only wanted to terrify me, not unalive me? Is it over then? I asked. Are they all going to be arrested? Detective Reyes sighed. It's a big network, Allie. We'll get many of them based on Marcus's information, but probably not all. That's why we still need to keep you safe until after the trial. You're our star witness. I spent the next 3 months living with my parents in Riverdale. I rarely left the house except for walks around their property. I dyed my hair from blonde to dark brown and started using my middle name, Rose, when I had to introduce myself to anyone new. Detective Reyes arranged for a security system to be installed at my parents' house, and local police drove by regularly. I spent my days helping Mom in her garden, reading books I'd always meant to get to, and attending therapy sessions via video chat. The therapist specialized in helping partners of intimacy offenders. She helped me understand that I wasn't responsible for Marcus's actions, and that my failure to see his true nature wasn't a personal failing. These offenders are master manipulators, she told me during one session. They specifically choose partners who are trusting and empathetic because those qualities make it easier to hide their behavior. It helped, a little. But I still had nightmares about Marcus, about Mike's hands around my throat, about the children in those photos. I kept in touch with Detective Reyes through weekly calls. The case was progressing well, thanks to Marcus's cooperation. They'd arrested 17 men connected to the network. They'd also identified and rescued several children who were being actively abused, not just photographed. That knowledge made the whole nightmare almost worth it. Jenna drove out to visit me a few times. She'd become something of a hero at school after saving me from Mike. She brought cards from my students who'd been told I was on medical leave. The cards were full of misspelled well wishes and colorful drawings that made me cry. "Everyone misses you," she told me during one visit. "The kids ask about you all the time. I miss them too, but I wasn't sure if I could ever go back to teaching. Every time I thought about being around children again, I remembered those folders on Marcus's hard drive, the betrayal of trust, the exploitation of innocence. Maybe I should look into teaching adults instead," I told Jenna. "Community college or something." She frowned. "Don't let him take this from you too, Allie. You're an amazing teacher. Those kids need you." I wasn't convinced, but I appreciated her faith in me. In late October, almost 4 months after the attack, Detective Reyes called with news. The trial date had been set for Marcus and 5 others, including Mike and the second man from the school. "It will start in 3 weeks. I would need to testify. Are you ready for this?" she asked. No, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to see Marcus again, to sit in a courtroom and describe finding those photos, to have defense attorneys try to discredit me. But I knew I had to do it. For those children, for Sophia, for myself. "I'll be ready," I told her. My parents drove me back to the city the day before I was scheduled to testify. We stayed in a hotel under fake names, with a police officer stationed outside our room. I barely slept that night, rehearsing my testimony in my head over and over. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing hallways. Detective Reyes met us at a side entrance to avoid the media that had gathered out front. The case had attracted national attention due to the size of the network and the number of victims involved. "Just tell the truth," she advised as we waited in a small room off the main courtroom. "Don't let the defense attorneys rattle you." When they called me to the stand, my legs felt like jelly. I had to walk past the defendant's table. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look at Marcus, but I could feel his gaze on me. The weight of it made my skin crawl. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Ms. Patel, led me through my testimony gently but thoroughly. I described finding the hard drive, the photos, and contacting Detective Reyes. My voice only broke once, when I had to describe recognizing some of the children as my students. Then it was the defense's turn. Marcus's attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit, tried to suggest I'd planted the evidence because I was jealous of Marcus's success, or angry about some imagined infidelity. I stayed calm, answering truthfully, not rising to his provocations. "And isn't it true, Ms. Reynolds, that you accessed Mr. Smith's private files without his permission? That you essentially hacked into his computer?" "I didn't hack anything," I replied steadily. "The hard drive wasn't password protected, and Marcus had told me I could use it to find old family photos for our wedding slideshow." The attorney tried a few more angles, but nothing stuck. The evidence was too overwhelming, and my testimony was consistent with what the police had found. As I was stepping down from the witness stand, I finally allowed myself to look at Marcus. Our eyes met for a brief moment. He looked smaller somehow, diminished in his orange jumpsuit. There was no anger in his eyes, just a hollow emptiness that chilled me more than rage would have. I testified for nearly 3 hours. By the time I was done, I was exhausted but relieved. It was over. I'd done my part. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I didn't attend after my testimony, but Detective Reyes kept me updated. The evidence was damning, not just my testimony, but the hard drives, the chat logs, the testimony of technical experts who'd analyzed the encrypted files. Those had contained the worst material, the kind that carried the heaviest sentences. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts for all 6 defendants on all counts. Marcus received 25 years without possibility of parole, more than the original deal would have given him, but less than the maximum because of his eventual cooperation. Mike got 30 years for the child indecency charges, plus the attempt on my life. "It's over," Detective Reyes told me when she called with the news. "They're going away for a very long time." But it wasn't really over. The nightmares continued. The fear when I saw a man who resembled Marcus or Mike, the way my heart raced whenever I received a text from an unknown number, even though the threats had stopped after the arrests. I decided not to return to my teaching position at Oakwood. It holds too many painful memories now. Instead, I applied for teaching jobs in other districts, eventually accepting a position at a small elementary school in a town about an hour from the city. I kept my dyed brown hair but started using my real name again. My new school knew nothing about my history with Marcus. Detective Reyes had helped ensure that my name was kept out of the media coverage of the trial. To my new colleagues, I was just a teacher who'd moved for a fresh start after a bad breakup. It wasn't entirely a lie. I was nervous on my first day back in the classroom. Would I see every male parent, every photographer, every friendly uncle as a potential predator now? Would I be able to trust anyone around children again? But when my new 3rd graders filed into the classroom that morning, their faces bright with first day excitement and nervousness, something inside me settled. These children deserved a teacher who believed in the good in people while remaining vigilant against the bad. They deserved someone who would protect them fiercely, because she knew exactly what they needed protection from. "Good morning, everyone," I said, smiling at their upturned faces. "I'm Ms. Reynolds, and I'm so excited to be your teacher this year. 6 months later, I was settling into my new life. My apartment was small but cozy, decorated with plants and books instead of photos. I'd made a few friends among the other teachers, but kept mostly to myself. I still attended therapy weekly and had started a support group for people who discovered their partners were not who they claimed to be. I received occasional updates from Detective Reyes. The investigation had expanded beyond Marcus's immediate network, leading to dozens more arrests across the country. Marcus continued to cooperate, apparently motivated by genuine remorse, or at least a desire for a slightly more comfortable prison life. Victoria and Sophia had moved to another state for a fresh start. We exchanged emails sometimes. Sophia was doing well in therapy and had joined a soccer team. Victoria had started dating again, very cautiously. We promised to visit each other someday when the wounds weren't so fresh. One Saturday morning, I was grading papers at a local coffee shop when someone sat down across from me. I looked up, startled, to see Jenna. "Surprise," she said with a small smile. "I hope it's okay that I tracked you down. Detective Reyes gave me your address after I pestered her for weeks." I was genuinely happy to see her. We hugged, and I felt tears pricking my eyes. Jenna was the one connection to my old life that didn't hurt to remember. "I have news," she said after we'd caught up for a while. "They're starting a new program at Oakwood, internet safety education for elementary students, age-appropriate stuff about online privacy and recognizing inappropriate behavior. The school board approved it unanimously after what happened." I nodded, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. "That's good. That's really good. They want someone to coordinate it district-wide," Jenna continued. "Someone who really understands the importance. I recommend you." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Me? Jenna, I can't go back there." "Not as a classroom teacher," she clarified quickly. "This would be administrative, developing curriculum, training other teachers. You wouldn't have to be at Oakwood much at all if you didn't want to." I started to refuse automatically, but something stopped me. Maybe this was how I could make meaning from the nightmare I'd lived through. Maybe this was how I could protect other children from predators like Marcus. "I'll think about it," I promised. And I did think about it. For weeks. I discussed it with my therapist, with my parents, with Detective Reyes. They all thought it could be healing, a way to reclaim some power. In the end, I decided to apply for the position. I wasn't sure if I'd get it or even if I truly wanted it, but I knew I couldn't spend the rest of my life running from what had happened. Marcus had already taken too much from me. My trust, my sense of safety, my belief in my own judgment. I wouldn't let him take my future too. The interview was scheduled for next month. I didn't know what would happen, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Not naive or blindly trusting. I would never be that person again, but cautiously optimistic that something good could come from something so terrible. I still checked under my bed sometimes. I still jumped when my phone rang with an unknown number. I still had nightmares about Marcus and Mike and those folders full of innocent children. But I also had students who made me laugh every day. I had parents who supported me even when they didn't fully understand what I'd been through. I had friends like Jenna who showed up when I needed them most. And I had myself stronger now, wiser, more cautious but not broken, not destroyed, still standing. That would have to be enough.